All right, Dan, the first Red Sox homestand is complete. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of good for the Red Sox in that homestand. They go just 3-7. We're going to hit on all of it. Now they head on the road. They're going to play Pittsburgh and Cleveland before coming back. But, for the first 10 games at home to give the home fans something to look at moving forward with this 2024 team, not exactly the best showing, and a lot of what we saw last year from the Red Sox.
Well, I think the most disappointing part is Alex Cora stressed before they broke for the season in spring training that he wanted to play better at home. He wanted his team to be much better at home than they were last year. And unfortunately, we saw some of the same mistakes that we've seen from last year's team. And, I think, there are excuses when it comes to some of the guys not having many reps in the big league level at where they're at. I think the Trevor Story injury, we all know that is such a big key to this team and what's happened with it. But just overall, I think if you're trying to make an impression upon fans, Boston sports fans, besides Red Sox fans, and even Red Sox fans, it wasn't pretty in a lot of ways, despite the fact that the starting pitching continues to shine.
Yeah, the starting pitching has been great. We're going to hit on that a little bit later, but they get outscored 57-35 in the homestand, but the defense, it's got to be eating at Alex Cora a little bit that it looks so similar to last year because they commit 12 errors in the homestand, but even more crazy than that, they give up 17 unearned runs during this homestand. And, I know you like to make fun of me for bringing up the stats. I'll just distill it to this, though, Dan. They go 3-0 in games in which they don't commit an error, and then 0-7 in the games in which they commit an error. And sometimes baseball is as simple as that. You just make the plays, good things are going to happen. But unfortunately for the Red Sox, that didn't happen that much during the homestand.
Now, there's finally a stat I can understand, Joe, when you run that by me. It's 3-0 versus 0-7. And it did seem as simple as that, didn't it? Because you got performances that you needed from pretty much your pitching staff, and you just didn't see it. And you're not going to win games, as we've seen so far, 8-7 with the offense and what they're doing right now. So they have to make those plays. Alex Cora said, they're critical. Those key plays are going to make or break this team on a daily basis. And you saw it, a ground ball to Reyes, who's out of position at third. He throws it in the dirt. Ground ball to Hamilton at short. He has a tough time with it. And those are the guys that, you just need to make plays for you right now. The one thing that bothers me, though, Joe, and I'm old school, as you know, and always have been, but like if you're an NBA guy, the easiest thing that you can improve anybody that's in the NBA is to shoot free throws every day. Shoot 100 free throws every day. You're bound to get better than you are. So for me, Wade Boggs came out at the same time every single day to take ground balls at third base and became a Gold Glove third baseman over the course of his career. He wasn't that when he came up to the big leagues. His defense was probably his worst attribute when it comes to how he was. So if I'm Pablo Reyes, if I'm David Hamilton, I am out there every day, no matter what time it is, take a coach and say, hit 100 ground balls to me. That's the way I start my day, and that's how I improve just your hands and just your footwork, just the feel of playing shortstop with third base on a big league level. And I wish they would do more of that.
Yeah, and with David Hamilton, this is a guy that was actually the defensive player of the year in the minors last year, but it just hasn't translated to the big leagues and playing shortstop, and it's such a big hole that they have to cover now with Trevor Story out for this season. And one thing you lose with Trevor Story being gone for the rest of the year, Dan, on top of the defense, is what he could have brought offensively. And this Red Sox offense, you and I talked about it in our season opening, talk together about where this offense could be this year. And we thought maybe, they could still be a top 15 offense or maybe even top 10 if things broke right because Tristan Casas is in his second year. Rafi Devers is in his prime. Well, right now they're in the bottom third in a lot of offensive categories. And I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about what this team can do moving forward, because you look at the lineup, a lot of averages below 200. Rafi Devers has been dealing with nagging injuries, and now Tyler O'Neill's on the 7-day IL.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that you projected this offense you would hope it would be has kind of gone south on this homestand, and you just hope. And again, I'm one who is willing to give it to Memorial Day to see exactly what this team is, but the situation not good when it comes to injuries, and those are the guys that are just key. And Rafael Devers dealing with 2 to 3 injuries and having an MRI on his knee and not looking good when he tried to play through it is the biggest guy on this team. This is the guy you expect to walk 3 times a game. But you got to see other guys step up. And losing Story in that heart of the order is huge, despite the fact that His numbers may not look it, but just a veteran presence. And then you had Tyler O'Neill, who got off to such a great start, and he's on the 7-day DL with a concussion. Those things, you don't need that. That's ripping the heart of your order out. And if that's the case, you need other guys to step up. It's a lot of pressure on Tristan Casas. Masataka Yoshida has been off to a really rough start. And then you had Vaughn Grissom that you thought was going to be a big part of that offense. That's what he's known for. And he hasn't been with the team either. So, it's a lot of pressure on Rafaela. It's a lot of pressure on Casas. It's a lot of pressure on guys that aren't normally used to that. And as we've seen, it's crept up and it's killed them. Other than Connor Wong and the catchers have been good, there haven't been many bright spots when it comes to this offense. So that all adds up to a heap of trouble. And if you're going to be like that, you got to win games 2-1 and 3-2, and the defense is killing them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Masataka Yoshida, you mentioned him. They give him a couple days off at the end of this homestand just because he hasn't been swinging the bat all that well, and that dates back even to the end of last year. But yes, the catching duo has actually stepped up big time from an offensive production standpoint. So that's been fun to see. Jarren Duran's been pretty good as well. The one thing that we can still hang our hat on with this Red Sox team is the starting pitching, which is the last thing we thought we could hang our hat on, in terms of being a strength for this team. Dan, coming into Friday's action, they still have the best ERA in Major League Baseball, first in wins above replacement as well. And yeah, Nick Pavetta's on the 15-day IL, and hopefully he'll be back soon. But the starting rotation, even though they're now dealing with some injuries, they've performed fantastically so far this year. And then, of course, Tanner Houck throws the first complete game shutout for the Red Sox in roughly 2 years, first one since June 6th of 2022.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, and that, as we've talked about a lot, what we saw Tanner Houck do was pretty amazing in an hour and 49 minutes with the Maddox effort that he gave. Was really cool to see. And Mark DeRosa, if you're perusing social media of the MLB Network, did a wonderful breakdown of Houck and how he's pitching better against lefties, and just the mix that Andrew Bailey has maybe given him. And he was the one guy that we thought, Joe, at the beginning of the season, that if he was going to benefit, who would benefit from Andrew Bailey and his philosophy, it would be Tanner Houck, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it with Cutter Crawford as well. So in light of Lucas Giolito being out pretty much for the season, in light of Nick Pivetta being down, their starting pitching has been pretty cool to watch. And I think that's a tribute to Andrew Bailey, tribute to these guys for getting it done. Justin Willard is also helping out with the pitching staff. That's really cool to see. And what Houck did the other day was just a blessing in so many ways. And I think Red Sox fans were like, wow. They tried to leave early for that game. You leave at 10 minutes of 9. You're trying to get a beer in the 7th inning. It's 8:00. So it was like, it was really cool to see, and just something different from this Red Sox team. But yeah, kudos to all those guys, and the change that, Houck is throwing sinker, slider, and that combination, moving the ball left to right, up and down. It's just, it's been really fun to watch these guys actually pitch.
Yeah, like Dave O'Brien on the telecast with the Tanner Houck complete game, because it was an hour and 49 minutes, saying, what do we do now? Because it ended so early.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, Dan, just one final thing. We'll try to end this on a positive note, right?
Nice.
20 games into the season, who would you say is your 20-game MVP for the Red Sox so far?
Well, I would give it to maybe Cutter Crawford because of what he's done so well as a big guy. But if you don't want to give it to a pitcher, then you look at a guy like Tyler O'Neill. Just every time he steps up, there's the threat of that home run. He's hit some huge home runs for this team. Jarren Duran, as you mentioned earlier, has been really good at the top of the order, and that's a huge sign for this Red Sox team going forward, to see him continue to use his speed and what he does and creates havoc on the base paths, but just running the base as well. Those are a couple guys that come to mind in my mind so far. I don't know how you feel, but that might be my top 3 when it comes to guys that have pitched. And, Slayton out of the bullpen has been fun to watch. So things like that, pretty cool watching these kids emerge. It's amazing, Joe. And again, you go optimistic here. They're 10-10. And, a lot of the leakage has happened already that couldn't happen to this team. So, maybe they like playing better on the road right now, starting off. They go to Pittsburgh and Cleveland, like you said. And who knows? Just keep it going, keep afloat until you get some of these guys back. And then we'll see what happens.
Our MVP, Dan Roach. Always enjoy talking baseball.
Wait. Who's your MVP?
I'll go Andrew Bailey. How about that? Is that cheating to go?
I like that.
To go the coaching side. I just think with what we thought of this pitching staff, to have the best ERA in Major League Baseball, and be the guy that's leading that. And I was gonna jokingly also say Cutter Houck too, because those two guys have both been so good this season with Crawford 0.42 ERA and then Houck doing what he's doing. It's cool to see the Red Sox develop guys internally, and I know it's sort of been thrusted upon with the way the depth or with the way the offseason went, Dan, because we thought they would sign more, maybe a couple more free agents,
Yep.
but it's happened, right? And we've talked about it. And people in this area have talked about the lack of pitching depth that the organization has cultivated from within. And it's cool to see two guys, one being a 16th round pick in Crawford, and then one guy in Houck that you're just both patient with to be the pitchers that they are. Hopefully it continues.
And it's pretty cool. And one last thing, Joe, as you mentioned, we taped this on Friday morning. Cam Boozer, 31-year-old
Yes.
lefty, being called up. If you just Google his story, he's gone through heck to get to this point, and he's going to be called up for the first time in his big league or his career. And I want to see the footage of Chad Tracy, the AAA manager of the Woo Sox, telling him the emotion, who he called first. What's that like for him at 31 years old? He's born on the West Coast, but he said he was a Red Sox fan. He was 11 years old, right? Prime time when the 2004 team did what they did. So I'm really happy for a guy like that. And I want a good cry later on tonight when I see on social media the clip of him getting called up to the big leagues for the first time, because he reminds me of The Rookie, the movie The Rookie,
Yep.
which is pretty cool story.
Yeah, stories like that never get old. And he's been great too with the Woo Sox. A lot of strikeouts. Alex Cora highlighted him in spring training too. So you thought that there could be a chance that he'd make the big leagues, and it's cool to see that he's finally now with the big league club. It'll be fun to watch him pitch.
With all your stats, like that's the beauty of the game right there, Joe.
Yes.
You just spew your stats right at me. That's the stuff that we highlight.
I appreciate that too.
That's the stuff that's great.
Too.
You don't have a heart. You don't have a soul when it comes to the game of baseball. That's the stuff I like.
The soulless Joe Weil, the man full of heart, Dan Roche, talking baseball with you. Dan, appreciate the time.
Wait, what's the heart? I get in trouble for that, right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Dan, appreciate the time as always.
Always a pleasure. Have a good weekend, Joe.